Hey everyone, how's it going? So today we're going to be doing a couple of little mods to my main commuter bike. This is long overdue. I've wanted one of these forks for quite a long time. I've been slowly putting money aside and everything, and we finally got one. If you don't remember this bike, this is a 1990 Specialized Hard Rock. I painted it up like a stump jumper because I really like the colorway and I couldn't find one of my size. And it's been almost 3 years and I still haven't seen an 89 stump jumper in my size locally. Going to be changing out the handlebar and the basket. This is a Wald 139. It's taken a few knocks in the years of commuting. And obviously we're changing out the fork, but we're also going to be changing out the decal. So the decal on the down tubes is stump jumper. So before Velocals shut down, I got some Hard Rock decals in the same colors as the stump jumper decals. So they should look really cool on it. Also going to be servicing the pedals and a couple other little things, just tidying the bike up and stuff. So I'm excited. Big day. We're going to try and have like a little front fender to match the rear one. We've got to build up a front wheel because the Clydesdale fork needs a 20-inch front wheel. So for this we'll be using a Salt front rim. This is a Salt Summit, so nice and wide. And we're going to be using a new old stock Shimano XT front hub. This is a 36-hole one to match the rim. Nothing too fancy, but it should do the commuting duties and everything quite well. And these are DT Swiss Champion spokes, so the straight gauge spokes. These are cut to length. We'll just quickly go over the wheel build as I do in my other videos. It's definitely something that's useful to have. You can build some pretty strange setups. So I wanted to run a disc brake, and it's kind of hard to find a decent disc front wheel here. So I wanted to use just like a Shimano hub, or I would have preferred something with sealed bearings, but it's going to be good enough. It's going to last like a decent amount of time and everything, as long as I keep it well serviced and everything. But if I had the option, or if I had more patience, I could have ordered a 36-hole disc front hub from somewhere else. The XT will certainly be up to the job though. And that's it all together. Just got to do the final true and everything. Really cool looking rim. So basically my criteria for this was, yeah, just something that's going to be sturdy enough and sort of match the rear. The tyre we're going to be using for this is a Sunday Current V2. I just wanted to try a slightly different pink tyre, so these aren't the ones that I used on the Hooligan. The ones I used on the Hooligan were Colony Grip Lock, I think they were called. Could be wrong there. Just wanted to try something a little bit different. Really cool looking tyre though. Pretty much the same colour as the Colony as well. So these are 2.4. I know actually, I could be wrong, but the Clydesdale fork, I think they recommend a 2.2 tyre. So I'll be running a fender on this as well, so I don't know what clearance is going to be, but we're pushing the boundaries a little bit here, but as you can see here, it just sort of clears. I think I might just have to cut the fender a bit short. You see that little strut, the little brace there, I might have to just finish it there. Moving on to the fork. So I really wanted this to be color matched to the frame. So we're going to scuff this up. We're not going to strip the whole thing back. That's a whole lot of extra time and stuff for no real reason. This is going to be a really good sort of base coat to prevent rust and everything from the future. Just an extra layer of protection really. And I guess the only downside would be a bit of extra weight. So basically just roughing up the paint so that our paint on top will stick a bit better. So just taking off the gloss look to it, I use some 400 grit sandpaper. Spray dot bike, I normally like this cold zinc primer, but it was all run out, so we're using this metal primer instead, which I'm guessing this would be like an etch primer, so it should etch into metal and everything a bit better. So this will be a really good base for our top coat. So just throwing a coat of that down. But as it turns out, our pink, our top coat was still in the mail. So we're going on to other things. This is the thing that I use to get these ESI grips off. Really fragile getting these grips off. This is just a fender stay that I rounded the end off. And using some isopropyl alcohol. Since I've been using this method, I haven't torn any ESI grips, but previous to this, I've torn probably two separate pairs, I believe. 3 grips in total I've torn, unfortunately. But since using this rounded off fender, I haven't broken any, so that's pretty cool. Let's get that out. Disassembling the front end just lightly, really. We're going to be stripping a bunch of the other parts off, just so we can tidy the frame up and stuff. This is my main commuter bike. I think I did about 2,000 to 3,000 Ks on it last year. Some of my other bikes do see a fair bit of use as well, but this is like my main go-to one, so I probably use this 50% of the time, compared to the other ones where they get like, you know, sort of a little bit of use trickled in here and there. Just taking off the parts. Haven't really had any issues with any of the bike really. Just change like the chain and cassette every now and then. Goodbye 26-inch front wheel. Really like this little light. It's just going to be more practical and everything. It's going to be more practical and yeah, just going to like it more. So with the fork comes with a 1-inch threadless headset. So I really like this headset on this bike. It looks really cool. So this is one of the only spots where we've had some cable rub. So we'll also be tidying up a couple of little these patches here. This is one of the main cable rub spots. I should have really used a little adhesive patch here to prevent that, but I just keep forgetting. The decal will be changing out. Just taking off the last few parts here. I really didn't want to have to strip the frame down to tidy things up. I wanted to keep like my mate's stickers and stuff on. So after I sort of pierced through the clear coat around the decal, it just came off pretty easily actually. I gave it like a little bit of heat with the heat gun, but it all came off in pretty much one piece. Pretty cool. So to tidy up some of the scuffs and everything, I'm just going to be going over like a little bit of wet sand with the 400 grit sandpaper, just scuffing that down just to feather the edges so it's not like a hard line. That's really the worst part of it. There's only a couple little scratches on the non-drive side. So for some reason here, I just cut over to the pedals. I think, it's because I was waiting for the paint. So I was really held up with waiting for the paint. PVT in Wellington. My paint was sitting in the factory for like just a week or something like that. So these pedals are the MKS Sylvan touring pedals. I got these from Blue Lug a few years ago and they've been holding up really well. I think the bearings are a little bit bigger than most of the loose bearings I've seen in pedals. Could be wrong though. Just putting on the lock nut with a little bit of blue Loctite just helps make sure that things are going to stay together. Don't really want a pedal falling apart. I've had a DMR V12 DMR pedal fall apart on me once before. The lock nut just somehow completely stripped off. Don't know what the story was there. Yeah, the pedal was running for a while and just all of a sudden just went bloop. These are the decal instructions, just if you ever need them. These are for the Velocals decals. So this is the Hard Rock decal I got. So as you can see, it matches the colorway I got for the bike. There's a bit of a hard line here where the clear coat was on the bike. So we're gonna scuff that up, feather it in a bit nicely, get everything all prepped and cleaned up. So you can see that little scratch was all feathered in nicely now too. So lining up decals, just put a little bit of masking tape top and bottom, draw some lines in the center line of the decal and line that up. Use some wetting solution, so just water with like a drop or two of some oil-free detergent. Just helps things be a bit more placeable. So you just want it like a little bit slick so you can move stuff around, and then you just push all the water out and everything. So these are an adhesive decal, they're not water slides, but they work great with, yeah, a bit of water in them. Helps place them and everything. Really cool looking decals. So these are the 2mm ones, so they're a little bit thicker, but you can still really, it's really hard to see the edge of this decal. So as you can see here, I just ordered one of these, but for some reason I got two of them. So if anyone needs an identical hard rock down to decal, just let me know, I'll send one out to you. A little bit of primer coat on there, and I'm gonna let that dry while we're waiting for the pink top coat. Checking the chain here, I knew it needed replacing, but just gonna take this off. Take off this chainstay protector. Okay. Thanks to Bike Dad who sent this out. It was pink at one point, but a bunch of commuting work and neglect and stuff. I'm not going to keep my main commuter bike spot free. It's always going to be a bit filthy, but the fenders really help keep that down. Taking off the cranks and everything, just to give the chain rings a bit of a clean. I think I did this a few months ago, so they're not that bad. But also we're going to touch up this chainstay here. So it's had this scratch here for quite a while, but there hasn't been too much rust or any rust build up really. Something about this primer coat that I used, that's just the sprayed up bike cold zinc primer. It really prevents rust even once the paint is like chipped off. Don't ask me how it works. I don't know. Taking out the bottom bracket and stuff. Just going to make sure that there's no rust and everything, and make sure the bottom bracket is mainly going to come out, and then re-greasing everything. Just a decent part of the servicing. So like the other patch there, I feathered it out a bit and then primed it and then went over some top coat. I had some of this green. This is the Spray Dot Bike Milan Celadon 2. And for New Zealanders and maybe Australians as well, this is the clear coat that I use over the top. This gives a nice glossy coat to the Spray Dot Bike finish. Changing out the cassette because we're changing out the chain as well. I do about 3 coats over the decals. It helps keep them in place and it protects them a little bit more as well. These decals do have like a UV coating as well to prevent that from the UV damage and stuff. Cleaning out the brake posts just with a little bit of sandpaper, WD-40. Greasing them. Keeps the pivots all in good shape. Really like these cantilever brakes. These are new production die comps. Spring adjustment on both sides. I gave the derailleur a bit of a clean up. It's part of the regular servicing really, just cleaning off the jockey wheels and everything. Changing back to the Simworks Homage tyres. I had these on the bike for quite a while until it got into winter and I started getting a bunch more punches. So they've got quite a bit of scunge in them. I cleaned these up the best I could, but that's pretty far ingrained in them, so that's just going to have to stay. Tyres still look really cool though, especially against this paint job. And we're going to have that pink tyre at the front, so it's going to look really cool. I wanted like a pink tyre on the rear than the sort of green tyre on the front, but hey, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The pink paint finally showed up. So it's time to get that all painted on. Good thing is the fork had plenty of time to dry and cure and everything. We've got a lot of humidity at the moment, so it's probably good that it had an extra few days. Putting the paint on. So if you don't know, that Spray Dot Bike is quite a textured matte finish. So putting it on quite close sort of prevents that from powdering up. Then going over the top, I use this clear coat, just a gloss clear coat by Dulux. So if in New Zealand, this is the one that I use and it works really well. Moving to the next hurdle now. So the headset that they send out with the fork is this black Cane Creek one. Quite a nice headset really with sealed bearings and everything. I wanted it silver though. I tried some paint stripper just to see if that was going to strip it off, but we ended up using a wire brush. Just a little wire brush on the Dremel, and then a couple of stages of wet sanding before using the Dremel again with a little polishing wheel and some autosol. Gives it like a nice polished finish. Looks pretty cool. Doing some more assembly now, just installing the bottom bracket and things. Some fresh grease in there and the threads. Tightening that back up. So you can see here on the chainstay I didn't do a nice feathering job. So you can sort of see like the hard lines there and the extra paint. I could have touched this up, but we're probably going to have some chain suck at some point. Like I said, this is the commuter bike, it's not a show bike, it doesn't really matter too much. Putting the crank cap back on there. Putting a different chain on. This isn't a brand new chain, but it's well under the 50% mark, so it should be nice for these chain rings and everything. Beautiful. I cleaned this up too. I just used some WD-40 and stuff. Looks like it'll go somewhere around. So I could use some double-sided tape or double-sided foam tape to hold this down, and then like 1 or 2 zip ties. But I had this on previously just with the zip ties and it worked really well. You can sort of adjust it from there rather than sitting it in one place and finding out it's in the wrong spot. I use a little bit of grease in the headset bearings and everything just to make sure things aren't going to get stuck in place, because you do get like a little bit of oxidization and galvanic corrosion, that sort of thing. Next thing that didn't really go wrong, but it's something to keep in mind. 1-inch spacers are pretty hard to find in New Zealand. Like, they come in black and that's about it. So I had some of these pink ones, and I found a seat post that's about the right diameter internally and externally that I need. Didn't really care too much about the external diameter, but as it worked out, it looks really good on the fork, like with the headset, with the stem and everything. Almost matches up to this Nitto steel one. I think it was a 30 point something diameter. I don't think it was 30.9. So just going to cut off a couple little sections of this and use that as spacers. I just use this pipe cutter on alloy and stuff. I have used it on steel a few times too, and it still works really well. Bit of WD-40 is like a cutting oil. Nice satisfying cracking noise as the pipe cutter cuts through the last little bit. So with pipe cutters, you do get like a little bit of a flare on it, so you have to sort of file that down a little bit. And we are going to trim the stereo tube, just to remove like a few extra centimeters that we don't really need. But we've got plenty of excess there in case you do put it in a different frame or something. Another little issue, I didn't want to buy a separate tool. So this is my star nut installer, and it's for 1 1/8 stereo tubes. I tried like a couple of different spacers and stuff to see if that would make up the difference, but it wouldn't. So we're just going to freehand it. Did a pretty good job though, it went in straight. Kind of want to polish that up a little bit more. So I've already got the shim in there to go from 1-inch stereo tube to 1 1/8 stem. So the handlebar we're using now is the Simworks Fun 3 bar. I think it has about 35 degrees back sweep, and it's a bit wider than the Nitto kite that was on it. It was originally black, but I paint stripped that off. Just because I bought the handlebar second hand, and I wanted the polished one. So yeah, looks really cool though. Polishing up the headset spacers a little bit more to sort of further match things before installing the front wheel. So we're just using a 160mm caliper disc rotor on there, and to keep the cantilever brake levers that we're using, I'm using a Avid Road BB7 caliper. I use these on quite a few of my bikes. Nice decent power for a cable brake. Pretty reliable. Eventually they do sort of start to wear and the pistons push on an angle, but it's a problem for later on. Chucking some new brake pads in there. I normally use sintered or like semi-metallic brake pads in them. Just because I'm a bit heavier and I just like to have a nice strong brake. Sometimes they're a bit noisy in the wet, but not really a big deal though. I'd rather have better braking performance overall. So with Avid brakes, or these BB7 specifically, you have to use like the cone, what do you call them? Cone pivot washers that you normally use like on V-brakes and stuff. So use them on top and below the caliper, then bolt them down. So I sort of get it like in the right spot, and then I'll hook the front cable up and then adjust it from there. So you do have adjustment on the outside and the inside pad. So basically you can just wind them in until they just touch, pull the cable tight, tighten that, and then loosen it until. So one of the last decisions I had to make with the bike was what am I going to put on the front. Ended up choosing a Basil large crate. This is a recycled plastic, pretty big front basket or crate. This is about the same sort of footprint as a Wald 139, probably a little bit bigger actually. Using some wing screws and aluminium flat stock to keep it all down. We do have a few other attachment points in the front here. It doesn't seem like it's really necessary. We might put like another strip at the front there if we need it in the future. But for now it's holding quite well. Another little mod, just for like usability really, is a brake lock. So you can see here I tried a different style. That didn't end up working that well. So I wanted something similar to what's on my hard rock. These are old Peregrine BMX levers. Old flatland riders used to use these to lock their brakes on. But they're really handy for commuters and stuff. I ended up just using this little aluminium block that I made with a spring, and there's a spoke with a nipple holding it in there. Works really well. Just holds the brake on. Grip's shifted a little bit too, I need to push that down a little bit. But as you can see there, the brake lock's on there nicely. Really good for stopping on a hill or something like that. If you're going to lock your bike up, or on the train and stuff. Another little mod. I think Gary did this as well. It's nice to have the U-lock there. This is the bike all done. So going over the fork, we've been using it for a couple of weeks now. I'm going to go over the downsides first, and then after that we'll go over the upsides, which you can probably sort of guess anyway. Biggest downside for me is the cost. It's probably a big downside for everyone. It's very expensive, especially in New Zealand and Australia. So for those not in New Zealand and Australia, cost probably isn't as big of a factor for you. But for us down here, it was over $1,000 shipped from Crust, just under $1,000 from Blue Lug shipped, and from Heat Screw Garage, thanks so much to Gary who put them on the map for me, it was $750 shipped to New Zealand. So a really good option there for people down under that are interested in it. Next thing, weight. It's definitely not as much as the way I thought it could have been. You never know how it's going to feel like in person when installed on the bike. But it does add some more weight, but I can still sort of pot the front wheel up if I need to get up onto like little, obstacles and stuff. The 20-inch front wheel has some downsides. It does have some upsides as well, but it has some downsides, like if you're rolling off a footpath and you go like into the road and there's a big gutter or something. Obviously it doesn't have the same rollover effect as the bigger wheels and stuff do. Not really much of an issue commuting and stuff. There are some instances where it is like a bit of a downside, but it's not really a big one for me. Off-road, you'd probably notice it a bit more because, yeah, smaller wheels aren't as great off-road. Smaller front wheel also has less centrifugal force, so it's a little bit harder to no hands. You have to get more speed, I feel, to be able to no hands the bike because it doesn't balance itself as much. Pretty much all for the downsides that sort of spring to mind. The downsides definitely don't outweigh the upsides to me, but the biggest factor that puts me and I'm sure a bunch of people off is the cost. Especially down under here, the shipping cost is insane because it's such a big thing to put into a box. Upsides for me, obviously the handling is up the top there. So it handles loads and stuff quite a lot better than most other options. The only thing I can sort of compare it to is the difference between lowrider panniers and like the higher ones. So because the weight is lower, it's just gonna handle a bit better. So the lower the weight is, closer to the center of the axle, the better the handling is gonna be. As well as the 20-inch front wheel, there's just so many tires available for it. So the BMX world alone, you have, every kind of width that you want. Now, because there's more cargo bikes that are 20-inch as well, you can get like the weird cargo tires for them. And obviously the strength, it's going to be longer lasting than like a front basket or a DIY mod. You would hope anyway, unless you get like some professional frame builder that's going to cost probably twice as much. And it's a reversible mod, so you pay this amount for it, but then if you go further on and get like an upgrade to a cargo bike, you can just take the fork off, sell it to someone, or keep it for another bike. It's not set in stone that this fork is stuck with this bike, blah, blah, blah. So for me, at least, the upsides definitely outweigh the downsides to it. Biggest factor, I think, for me and a lot of people would be the cost of it. But if you put some money aside every now and then, and depending where you are in the world, then yeah. And I was putting some money aside and I saw the Heat Screw Garage one and I was like, that's gonna save a bunch of time saving up for it. So I jumped on that while I could because they weren't in stock at the time. I think they're still in stock now, but I could be wrong. But yeah, thanks for checking the video out. I'll see you again in the next one. Next one is gonna be the cheap bike build. So we're gonna have that out before the end of the month. So yeah, thanks for checking it out. Bye. I'm gonna do a longer review a couple of months' time just to see sort of if I'm still liking it and stuff. I don't think I'm gonna break it, but you never know. I'll do an update if I do.